screen. Am I on?
Yes.
Okay, I don't have the right screen on. Let me go participants, whatever, share screen. Okay, so it is now 7 o'clock on Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020. I will begin the Wellfleet Select Board public meeting. We will begin with the reorganization of the Select Board, election of chair, vice chair, and clerk. I'll start with nominations. And so I'll take nominations from the board, and I nominate Michael DeVasto for chair of the Select Board. Are there any other nominations? Hearing no other, everybody's unmuted and all that? Okay, so hearing no other nominations.
Helen's muted. Helen's muted.
I'll get her.
So Madam Chair, I did check with Ethics Commission, after going into my 9th year, and Mike would be a really good chair, and Janet, you have been a good chair. I think I would like to be chair this year. So there is another nomination. And as I said before, no hurt feelings if people don't want to vote for me. But we have a motion on the floor. Or do we have a motion on the floor?
Don't have a motion. We did because you were muted. No, the motion is, there is no motion since you're unmuted. No, I was asking for nominations. So we now have Michael DeVasto as a nomination for chair, and we have Helen Wilson as a nomination for chair. Are there any others? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of Michael DeVasto, please say yes. And with the name?
Yes, Justina.
Yes, Janet.
Yes, Michael.
Ryan abstain.
Ryan's abstaining. Okay.
I think I'll vote yes.
You're going to vote yes?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So four, Michael DeVasto, 1 abstaining. So Michael is now our new chair. Congratulations. Yay, my D. Okay, and how about for vice chair?
I nominate Janet Reinhardt to be vice.
Thank you. Any other nominations? So hearing none, all in favor of Janet Reinhardt as vice chair, say aye.
Aye, Justina.
Aye, Michael.
Helen second. Helen, aye. We
Janet,
didn't have a second on that.
Ryan abstain.
okay, and Ryan's abstaining. Okay, so thank you. I get to be the new vice chair. And now, Ryan, we don't usually have this as an election because the new person always gets to be the clerk. So you are now our clerk.
Actually, Madam Chair, we have to vote to appoint him clerk, or not appoint. We have to vote him clerk.
Yes,
I
I
think
know.
they made me clerk. I don't remember getting a vote.
I was gonna say, yeah. So all in favor of Ryan Curley being clerk?
Second, Helen second. Who made the motion?
I did.
Okay, Helen second.
Michael, aye.
Helen, aye.
Justina, aye.
Ryan, do you want to vote on this?
I'm going to abstain as well.
Fair enough.
So congratulations, Ryan. I'll talk to you tomorrow or something, but the clerk, the definition, the job definition of the clerk has changed over the past few years. So you can check in with me, Dan, Courtney, and Jeannie Mack, and we'll see what you want to do. Make it easy. Okay, wonderful. So I will now hand over the reins to Chair Michael DeVasto.
Okay. So I don't have to reconvene the meeting because that's already done. So I guess we'll just move on to our second item, announcements, open session, and public comments. Note, public comments must be brief. The board will not deliberate or vote on any matter raised solely during announcements and public comments. Do we have any announcements or comments from
Mr. Chair?
board, I guess?
Mr. Chair, I have an announcement. I believe everybody knows that Richmond Bell died on June 14th. He was the son of Dr. Clarence Bell, who was the town doctor for many years. Richmond Bell was a legend and an icon in this town. He's a decorated veteran. He landed on Omaha Beach, had 3 Purple Hearts, 1 Bronze Star. He also received from the Consulate General of France last year, presented him with the French Legion of Honor medal, and that is the highest French decoration awarded to service to France. He also served on the Wellfleet Fire and Rescue Department for 40 years. He was a trustee of Cape Cod 5 Bank, and we all know and love him for his antique cars in the 4th of July parade and throughout town. So all honors to Richmond Bell. Thank you.
And he was an avid gardener.
Didn't know that one.
Anyone else? Chief Hurley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Congratulations this evening. Just 2 quick announcements. First of all, as we all know, we're coming into the summer season here, and we're just asking for some patience up on Ocean View Drive this season. We do have some changes at some beaches, some limited parking. So starting next week, the week of the 4th, you'll see an increased police presence up there, especially on weekends, so we can stay ahead of the traffic and the stuff that is up there. And another quick reminder with the 4th, next weekend, that fireworks in Massachusetts are illegal, and we will have presence at the beaches the July 4th weekend at night too, just to make sure that is enforced and that everybody has a safe 4th. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Anyone else from the audience?
I'm not seeing any.
Okay, so moving on. Discussion of COVID-19 updates and recommendations. And I don't know if anyone would like to speak on this first. Did you put this on there, Matt? This is just running on there generally. So I have one, but I'd like to let anybody else who wants to speak go first. And there's none? Oh, Janet, you're muted.
If
There you go.
anybody wants to do a brief update of what was discussed at the 10 o'clock meeting, if there's some highlights, especially since I missed it.
So it was discussed. I actually only caught 2/3 of it, so I don't know if Chief Hurley wants to. I missed Chief Hurley's announcement, but I imagine it was the same thing about beaches.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, this morning we just did our usual department updates. It sounds like right now that the recreation program is open in some limited fashion right now. We did speak about the beaches this morning, and we are going to move that meeting to the 3rd Tuesday of the month, beginning next month, as we're moving into phase 3 shortly, and a lot of decisions for the summer have been made already. So if need be, however, we can go back to the weekly 10 a.m. meetings, but we figure between staff time and everybody else in the full swing of the season. So I think that was pretty much it this morning. We've been doing those since March 31st, every Tuesday, and we've had quite a response, 75 to 100 participants per week. So we really appreciate the town support on that.
Okay, I have one update, and that is that the state has allowed indoor seating in restaurants. This took me by a little bit of surprise. I'm sure it took some restaurant owners by surprise as well. I don't think people were sure that was going to happen. now that it is happening, I would just like to, thank our restaurant owners for providing the service that they're providing and doing it at short staffing situations. And I'd just like the public to be aware that, I haven't spoken to one restaurant owner that's fully staffed. And so I'd just like to ask the public, be patient with the establishments. They're doing the best they can under the circumstances to serve everyone that they can. And I'd just like to implore that all business owners comply with the state guidelines for reopening the indoors. And I really ask that they consider the health and safety of their workers and employees as they move into this sort of experimental phase of reopening to indoor seating in a resort community. It's obviously a little bit different when people are coming and going from everywhere. So that's all I have to say. And also to be patient with town staff, which is also understaffed in many departments. Everyone's doing the best they can to meet the demand that we're going to see probably come next week as people descend down to the Outer Cape for their vacations. And then the one other thing I wanted to just remind everyone is that the board voted at our last meeting to open LeCount Hollow Beach to parking for resident and non-resident taxpayers only. That goes until 4 o'clock every day when they stop checking stickers, I believe. And all other beaches, towns, landings, ponds, and bayside beaches are open to visitor stickers. So those are the updates I have for COVID.
One correction there, Mayo Beach does not require a beach sticker, so that
Yeah,
beach is open
you're
to
correct.
everyone.
Yeah, Mayo Beach and Marconi are open to day trip parking as well. That's not, Mayo Beach is free parking. We don't charge there, so day trippers can go there, and also Marconi for paid parking, which I think they charge $25 a day. But I'm not 100% sure what the park's doing. I've not been totally clear on what their plan is for reduced
And
parking.
Mike?
Yep.
Mike? Hi, this is Helen. Let's remember, and correct me if I've got the times wrong, but before 9 and after, is it 4 o'clock in Wellfleet? You don't need a sticker, so we can go anywhere.
Right.
Mike, Lily Green has her hand up.
I see Lily Green has her hand up. Lily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations to you. And I'd like to also acknowledge Janet Reinhardt for all of her years of service as chair to our community. As you know, and the members of the board know, that I am your assembly delegate for Wellfleet, and I was talking to the county administrator a couple of days ago. One of the topics was COVID-19 and what we could do for our business community to support that community. And he said, which I'm sure you'll get updates to, that our state rep Sarah Peak and our state senator Julian Sear have said that we will get many thousands of masks, face masks to give out to businesses for their employees, etc. And that we've been updated that there are a number of part-time health officers that are being trained that will be available to the town to help and support the businesses as they open. So those are two things that the county is trying to support the business community with as we open. Thank you.
Okay, so anyone else? No? Okay. I'll be moving on now to board and committee appointments and updates. So let me just find my agenda here. Okay. Oh, it's right up here. So the annual reappointment of members, and a thank you for their continued service. Sorry, give me one sec. I just got to get here to my agenda because I don't ever have a printed copy. So it looks like, does anyone have anything to discuss about this? Or are we ready to just move on these reappointments? Nothing to discuss?
One thing,
Helen?
not Madam Chair, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, get the text right, right. So despite the fact that some of these people have been serving for years, I do hope that they will all get, just because they're getting reappointed, they're going to get that electronic submission for open meeting law and conflict of interest law courses. Ryan touched on that just now. In other words, it shouldn't matter if you've been on the planning board for 700 years. You should get it every time you get reappointed.
They will.
They will?
Jennifer Conjal, the clerk, will handle that.
Thank you. I would be ready to vote on the whole thing as a lump or a herd.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody object to that? No? No objections? Do you want to make a motion, Helen?
Oh, sure. I reappoint all the committee members listed in our packet for this agenda item for the term specified for each one. That's it. I move to reappoint them.
Second, but do we have to read each name?
No.
No,
Okay, second.
Helen, I.
Christina, I. Oh, sorry, Janet.
She's muted.
We lose Janet.
She keeps muting herself, sorry.
There we go. Okay. Janet, I.
You're muted.
Did Ryan go?
Ryan, I.
Justina eyed. I saw it in her mouth.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
So
Okay.
5-0. Approve. Okay, moving on. I got a 2-year-old up here, so 1 second. Okay. Committee update, Energy and Climate Action Committee. So Dick Elkin here.
Yes.
Hi, Dick.
Hello. Congratulations on your appointment as chair. The Energy Committee would like to discuss 3 main topics today. The first is that we have been applying for and have a good likelihood of success on a number of grants. I see Suzanne Ryan was here earlier. Suzanne, would you like to talk to that? Suzanne's a member of our.
Yes. Can you,
Well, I
can
don't.
you hear me?
Yeah.
Suzanne.
She's muted, see?
Suzanne, you're muted.
They have to unmute.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Yes. So in 2020, the Energy and Climate Action Committee applied for 2 grants. They're now in process, being reviewed by the grantors. The first one was the Green Energy Communities Grant. And that grant was for, it was an energy.
We lost her.
We lost her.
Suzanne, we lost your sound.
Sometimes the technology.
There you are.
Range
From lighting improvements to an energy management system for the elementary school.
Sorry, Suzanne,
And
you lost
that
the-
grant application was submitted on May 1st, and we're waiting to hear back from the grantor, which is the Department of Energy Resources. They're reviewing it. They've been in contact with us, and we should be hearing maybe a decision on that by midsummer. The second grant, which was submitted very recently, June 11th, was for the municipal, the MPV grant, municipal, I'm going to forget what the P is, vulnerabilities. And so what that grant was for was to request a consultant to study vulnerabilities in low-lying areas and make recommendations on improvements. And that is part of a regional project that involves several other towns on the Cape. It's being overseen by the Cape Cod Commission. They helped us with that. And it was submitted on June 11th, as I said. And we should be hearing about the results or the decision on that by the end of summer. And then a third possible grant related to that last one is, it would be a companion project for vulnerable municipal buildings in vulnerable areas, to hire a consultant to do an assessment on buildings that might be vulnerable to climate change related instances. And if we were to do that, there's a very strong possibility that, again, we would be working with the Cape Cod Commission. They just have to see if their calendar is free at that time. So that's it for grants.
Suzanne, we had lost you for a second in the beginning when you were talking about the first grant. And I don't know if we missed something because we kind of lost your signal. So do you think you could just quickly summarize what was the amount of that grant that you applied for?
Suzanne is muted again.
Energy.
You can't.
No, I can't. Not the whole thing.
What are you saying?
Suzanne is muted. Oh, there she is. Okay.
Dick, do you feel like we got the whole thing, or was there some pieces missing?
Well, two things. The amount of the first grant and second grant, if you could tell us that, Suzanne. The first grant, I believe, was around $100,000, and the other, I'm not certain.
She's totally gone.
You know,
Okay.
we are working with Hillary Greenberg on the municipal vulnerabilities planning. So she's the lead person for the town for that.
And that's with Provincetown, Truro, Eastham, and Wellfleet. Is that right?
I know about Truro and Provincetown. I'm not sure about the others, but they
Okay.
should be. Yeah.
Oh, maybe not Eastham. Okay.
So that was the first item we wanted to discuss. The second item has to do with greenhouse gas emissions and the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. There is an article that was on the warrant that the town adopt as a policy that we do everything we can as soon as practical to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The Energy Committee is very concerned about that. We have been doing activities to help people with that. David will talk a little bit more about what we propose to do in the future. But right now, the town is planning in conjunction with 3 other towns, a new regional high school. And that regional high school is not planned to be net zero greenhouse gas emissions. That's unfortunate because by 2050, Governor Baker has announced as a state policy that the state should be net zero. And the state Senate has introduced and passed a bill that said that by 2030, we should reach 50% of 1990 levels. By 2040, reduced by 75% to 25%, and by 2050 down to zero. So that is fairly soon, the way I see it. It's only 10 years in the future that the state has a goal to reduce half its greenhouse emissions. The one thing we should not do is build a new regional high school that isn't net zero. And the reason we shouldn't build it is that within 10 or 15 years, we're going to have to retrofit it if it's not built to net zero in the first place. That means that we will be spending an awful lot of money retrofitting something that we could have done right the first time. Now, I know there's a schedule for getting this done and people have deadlines and they're working to them. But I had a boss who used to say, there's never enough time to do it right the first time, but there's always enough time to do it over again. And that's true for money. The amount of money it takes incrementally to do it right the first time is very small compared to what it will take to do it over again once the building's in place. So I think we should definitely consider seriously having a net zero building. I know the Cape Cod Commission is now considering a change to the RPP. I don't know if it will pass, but it was met with overwhelming support by the people who came, and I think the commission will consider it favorably. The state is considering a law. The county, through the Cape Cod Commission, is considering modifying the RPP, and every town on the Cape has the same item on its agenda that we do, requesting that we have net zero emissions. So I think there's a structural problem in that somehow the Energy Committee wasn't part of the process to decide or to discuss what standards this building would be built to. I don't want to say we need bigger scope, but somehow we have to be part of that process.
Dick, can I ask a question real quick? Sorry to interrupt. I just want to kind of get to the root of it here. Do you know how close the school is to being net zero? What's proposed? I mean, it is an energy efficient building that they're proposing. I'm just wondering how far off it is. And I just want to point out that this is a regional decision that seems to have some resistance to it in its current form, and increasing spending might be a difficult thing to ask of the region at this point right now, just logistically, politically speaking. I'm not saying you're wrong. I agree that doing things right the first time is the way to do them. But I'm just wondering how close you think the structure is going to be to net zero.
It's being heated with natural gas. And that is a low emitter compared to fuel oil, but it still emits a lot of greenhouse gases. So it's not, I can't tell you how much it is. I can tell you in dollars, it's probably 6% more, which we assume would be made up over the lifespan of the building, because it's a 40-year mortgage probably, maybe longer, and amortized over 40 years, that's not a lot of money. And it will save on heating oil or heating on natural gas bills over time, because we won't be using natural gas. But the biggest expense will be the retrofit. And I believe we will be forced to a retrofit within 10 or 15 years. It doesn't seem that we have any choice in that matter, because that some bill is going to pass the House and Senate to force municipalities and residents and all new building to be net zero in the near future.
Okay. Well, I've got Helen's hand up right here, so I'm going to call on Helen. Helen, you're muted.
Okay. There are different places to unmute, you know, they're like 3.
That's okay. We'll bear with you.
So yeah, thank you. Through you to Dick or to David or to whoever's there. What kind of leverage do we have as a single town? What kind of leverage do we have as a consortium of towns to blow the whistle on this? Your excellent memorandum, the last 3 paragraphs, except the sign off one, are excellent, and you've just gone over them for the public. But we therefore urge the regional school system, the select boards of our 4 towns, and the citizens at the 4 town meetings to go forward with plans for regional high school only if it meets net zero standards. So is there any organization to gain leverage about this? Because I completely agree with you
Well,
that we shouldn't spend money on it to have it retrofitted, and that will happen. What is the leverage? All 4 towns blow the whistle on this?
any one
one
town
step.
blows the whistle. The leverage is that all 4 towns must agree.
I didn't quite catch that. Could you please repeat it?
I don't know. Helen, the leverage is that every town must agree and any one town can blow the whistle.
I've got Lily Ann Green right here. Unless there's anyone from the board would like to speak. Does anyone else on the board like to speak to this? Not seeing any hands. Lily's hands down. Okay.
No,
You want to speak on this, Lily?
no, she just recognized me. I think Courtney recognized me.
Okay.
But thank you for recognizing me. In response to Helen's question, I believe the way the discussion makes sense from our energy committee was that we wanted to bring this before the board because we, as a collective energy committee, felt that perhaps we could meet with the school superintendent and people on the school board and the design team to try to present new facts. There's a window now of an additional 4 months. The governor has made this declaration about getting to net zero, and perhaps there's even some money behind it. We don't know, but we would like the support of the select board to move forward and to start meeting with others to see if we can have any kind of impact in education and perhaps even getting to the place where the school is redesigned and it is net zero.
Okay.
Following up on what Lily said, if I might, we decided to only do this with this board first before we began to contact other energy committees in other towns to get your input. But our plan would be to go work with other energy committees and people in other towns.
Okay, I'm going to call on Justina Carlson.
Oh, thank you, Mike. Through you to Dick. Now, how did you determine it wasn't built to net zero, and how much information have you had about the building, and what thoughts do you have on how big a deal it is to change it and what should be done?
Well, we explicitly asked the question, is it built to leads net zero? And we're told that it was considered but rejected as too expensive. And I believe the delta might be $6 million, but I'm not sure of that.
And have you seen any plans or any?
No, we don't have alternate plans.
So you just got an answer that it was indeed too expensive to do net zero.
Yes.
And what would be the top 3 things that would have to be looked at? You mentioned the furnace. Is it a question more insulation? I mean, I know these don't have, you're not going to sit down there and redraw the building, but I assume there's some top line issues that usually come up when we're talking net zero.
You usually would put in heat pumps either air source or ground source heat pumps. You would do additional insulation on residents and the commercial buildings I've seen. That's additional insulation applied on the outside of the building. So you build it in the standard way, and then you put an extra 6 inches of insulation on the outside of it, and then whatever is the external.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure what this building would require, and I'm not sure how much glass is involved in the current design. So
Sure, but you get just given some great
Yeah.
insight. So there's quite a bit of facts that, I mean, I'm sort of trying to think about how we make it a better dialogue and start to make it less scary, you know what I mean? And then I should assume there might be public funds or grants out there, because I think as we look to think about how to influence the process, we are going to want it to be positive and demystify it. Demystify it, which is why I asked you the questions I did about and then you said the heat pump and the extra insulation and so forth. I mean, I forget the total number. You don't know off the top of your head what % of the total estimated building cost 6 million is.
No, I don't.
No, I don't either. I'm sorry, but I bet it's quite an expensive project. So 6 million be nice to see that as a %, and then we could start thinking about how much to borrow 6 million more over a 40-year amortization of 30 wouldn't, start to be so daunting. So that's where my mind goes. What is it going to take? How much is it going to cost? What is that 6 million break down to yearly? What funds might be out there that are available for net zero that weren't for the regular building, So those are my thoughts.
Including perhaps some lobbying to make funds available from the state.
Right.
Okay, Ryan Curley had his hand up next. Ryan?
Yes, so the current deadline is November 1st for the school bonds. I mean, it was originally pushed back from, I forget what the original date was, but basically the clock started ticking in February, and the states extended that. On November 1st, if it has been approved by all the towns, the committee would have, or the Nauset School Building Committee would have to seek another extension through the MSBA to get another extension. And I don't know. I think what we would really need to do is to have representatives of the Nauset School Building Committee attend a meeting and present, present what they have and what is possible and what could be problematic. That's basically.
I agree. There is a meeting, I believe, on the 30th of this month of the Regional School Committee Building Committee. And we were going to try to talk to them. Their agenda has been published for a week, but maybe it's flexible yet.
Okay, Janet, you're up next.
Yep, thank you. So I would like it, Dick, if you told us exactly what you want from us tonight, but not yet. So this really is under the purview of the building committee and the school committee. That's, we can support this, but they would be the ones that would make decisions with it. And unfortunately for schools, everything's always based on money. So I think it would be great to see some costs and savings. I mean, I'm all for, I'm pretty, net zero myself. So, but yeah, you've got to get the school committee involved, the building committee involved.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so what exactly do you want from us tonight? Just support for this, or, what do you want from us tonight?
just general support and advice. And we will, our current plan, unless the board objects, would be to contact this regional school building committee to send this letter on to Tom Conrad, the one you got, and to contact other energy committees to see how they feel about this. The two other energy committees. East Ham doesn't have one. So
what did you send to Tom Conrad? You just said we could
I haven't-
send the letter we got. I don't know what letter that is.
It's on the agenda right under,
Is that the first one where it says the proposed regional high school should meet net zero construction standards?
that would be the letter I would send, yes.
That's the letter. Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, thank you.
next up is Helen.
Yeah, I could make a motion to, if you want me to have the Energy Committee send that letter to the committee. But the other thing is it possible through you to Dick for your committee to get to that meeting? It's important that I think we do this at this meeting so that you could make that other meeting at the end of the month, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
so the other thing I want to remind everybody is this is so time sensitive, not just because we should have done it yesterday, but because we've been experiencing on this board how cumbersome having anything like this happen is for a large public project. And in other words, if in 20 years this building needs to be retrofitted, when it could have happened now, it will take a really long time. It's like a python digesting a goat or something. And so can I make a motion or do you want to talk about it some more, Mike?
I'd just like to bring up one other point, and that is that I believe there's towns voting on this right now, and there's a lot of federal money at stake, or state money, can't remember who's footing the bill. I think it's this federal money. And I'm a little apprehensive to sort of blow things up. I just don't know how much time there is to sort of like start this process now. And even though I think it's the right way to go, I think it would be the right way to do it. But getting all these towns to agree even on what's proposed right now, and they've all had time to digest it, I'm a little apprehensive about sort of pushing for additional spending at this point, just because I just don't know if there's the appetite in all of the regional towns to accept that. And I don't even know if there is right now to accept what's on the table. I think it would be crazy if it didn't pass, because we'd be losing essentially a lot of funding. But I just wanted to put that out there. I don't have a great sense of where other towns stand on it. And I think sending a letter out is a good idea, but I think really talking to other energy committees and seeing where they stand first in these other towns, as Dick had said, might be a prudent first action. But, you know, I mean, essentially just say that we will not support the building if it's not, we will only support the building plans to go forward if it meets net zero standards. That's taking a pretty stark stance. So I just want to understand, we're basically saying if we ratify this as a select board, that we're saying we only, is that, maybe I'm wrong about how I'm reading this.
Well, I'm not saying it should be vetoed. I really think it may go through, the bill may go through, but then they will, given the will, try to revise it to be net zero, to seek additional funding so the cost doesn't go up substantially. But they have to have the will to do that.
Right.
Mike?
Right. So somebody who's got their hand
Mike?
up. Helen?
Helen? Yes.
Okay, you can
So
speak.
reading the paragraph. May I speak?
Yes.
Thank you. Reading the paragraph, it doesn't say you do it our way or the highway at all. That paragraph says we urge the towns, the school system to do this. And I suggest that Wellfleet can lead the way on this. And we've been very distracted from the major elephant in the room, which is climate change by recent events, which are not unaffected by climate change. Not all that obliquely. So this memorandum is not my way or the highway at all. The language doesn't say that, Mike. It just says we need to, yeah. And I think it's very well drafted. It's good language. And I suggest we move them to have it be the Energy and Climate Change Committee, Climate Action Committee, draft it to be sent as a letter, you know, with addressed to people, copy us with it, and you know, get it out there. And I would hope that they would request to be on the agenda of this upcoming meeting at the end of the month, which is, by the way, not very far off, and not kick this particular can down the road.
I don't think we have time for that anyway, but okay, I'm going to move on from Helen to Ryan, if you have something new to say. And then Justina, if you have something new to say.
Yes, just real quick, Mr. Chair. If you could please request on the behalf of the Select Board to have a member of the Nauset Regional School Building Committee attend one of our next scheduled meetings. I think that would be one way of getting through this. Gordian's not, you know, not relying on go-betweens, but to see what the current planning is. Thank you.
When we come to future agenda items, remind me on that. Okay, and Justina, something new?
Yeah, I did a quick Google. It's like 4% of the building costs that Dick's talking about, given that 6 million's an estimate of 132 million buildings. So I think Dick made really good points that it's more expensive to kick the can than deal with it now. I'd be against anything that Wellfleet goes rogue, or that that we make a negative process, because I think it's going to be something where we can get to win-win. It was really helpful to hear from Ryan the deadline. So it's going to be tricky because, as Ryan pointed out, we're sort of already out of time. But the numbers, just doing that back of the envelope, when we amortize that $6 million additional cost over the cost of over the term of the loan, it should be doable. I mean, we're already dealing with a $132 million elephant.
Mm-hmm.
So a $6 million baby elephant, we should be able to think it through there. So I don't have the solution of the evening of how to handle this, but I think we should be happy we have such a great energy committee and see if we can influence the process in a positive manner. Because I think I agree with Dick's points and his committee's point in the letter.
Okay, well, is someone Helen, do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, and this is a moderate but very clear letter, so I feel okay about it. It's not melodramatic. I move to have the Energy and Climate Action Committee send the memorandum that we got in our packet, drafted to be a letter to, what is the name of the organization, Dick, please?
Nauset Regional School Building Committee, something like that.
To the regional, Nauset Regional School Building Committee, with our acknowledgement of our support of the memorandum. Do I have a second?
Second, Justina.
Helen, I.
Justina, aye.
Michael, aye. Janet's muted and Ryan's muted.
Aye. Ryan, aye.
Janet, you're muted. Aye. Janet says aye. Thumbs up. Does that mean aye? Okay. Janet is aye.
Whipping it up now. She's not chair.
Okay, now you can
Okay.
hear me.
So if you've, sorry, there was some hands up still. If your hand's up and after you've spoken and you don't want to speak again, please put your hand down. If you can remember.
Yeah, Mike, we have a third item on the agenda.
Yep,
Well,
okay.
I'd like to ask David to talk to it. It's our plans going forward for what we hope to see for greenhouse gas emissions. David?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. There's a 3-page document in your packet I'm sure you saw. I'm not going to go over the whole thing or read the whole thing. Dick has covered the general urgency and the state level action very nicely already. But in the end, where we stand with taking action is at the local level. We don't have a federal government that's leading at all. States are leading, companies are leading, communities are leading. We're a community and we can lead as well. One of the things to think about is some people may not be completely clear what does net zero even mean. And just to be clear, it's basically to get as much electricity from renewable resources as we use. You can think about it as a combination of energy efficiency improvements, local clean energy production, or purchasing renewable energy. And another way is to say we need to be more efficient with our energy and electrify everything, which is a very big statement, but that's essentially what it comes down to. And I'll get into a couple of the points in a minute. And we feel as a committee that we need to move, and I should add before I go further that this document is in process of consideration within the Energy Committee. We're not here to ask you to approve this because we haven't approved it quite yet, but we wanted to take the time to update you on what we're thinking about. And this is a major, major endeavor potentially because it changes almost everything about how we operate. And there's going to be lots of controversy, no doubt about this. So we wanted to certainly get your individual reactions, but also to be clear that we will be refining this within our committee and hopefully expanding out and discussing this type of activity with other energy committees and other stakeholders and on the Outer Cape. So the primary structural action that we're thinking about recommending is to set up something we could call it an Outer Cape Net Zero Task Force. And this would be representing the 4 Outer Cape towns, maybe 5, composed of representatives from each town, town officials, energy committee members, other stakeholders, business owners. And the idea is to basically do a tremendous amount of outreach to the community and to constituent groups and stakeholders. So we don't have any interest in presenting a plan that we say this is the plan. We want the plan, and the plan is not going to succeed if we did that anyway. We'd like the plan to come out of conversations with the community. So lots of organization, lots of education, outreach, educational materials, set some net zero goals, really use this task force to focus and mobilize our efforts in this very important and equally difficult task. And just to give you a sense of it, moving down in this document, we put together some potential net zero goals, at least by category. I'm not going to get into the weeds on it, but categories. So, and there are 5, if I recall, 5 categories. So again, we've mentioned it a couple times, energy efficiency in existing buildings. that's a category. That can be done through and with the Cape Light Compact potentially, and needs to be done in nearly all the buildings instead of a much smaller percentage that it's been done in. That would be a big project by itself. Second, net zero new construction. This is like a stretch code plus, and this is something that is actually being worked on actively at the state level. There is a net zero building code that is under development that is going to be pushed to go through at the state level. I don't know how long that's going to take. It could take a considerable time. It's our thinking that if that happens, it happens, but if it does, it'll take a while, that we can, in the meantime, be educating ourselves and the community and listening to people about what that might mean to have net zero new construction, so that when the new state code happens, I believe it will happen, given the governor's mandate and the state Senate being so supportive. It's just a matter of when. If we can prepare for that, we will be able to jump on it as a region much more rapidly, because we will have already had conversations, meetings, education to learn about what that might really mean. Thirdly, electric powered transportation. This is another one that seems perhaps like a pipe dream. It should have been certainly in the past, but it actually isn't. There's a good case to be made that there's going to be a tipping point where having virtually all transportation electric could happen. And in the meantime, as you see in this document, we would do education, promotion, work out financing, work with local financial institutions to move towards electric powered transportation. Fourthly, these are all huge projects, as I'm sure you've already thought of. Decarbonized municipal home and business heating. So that means, to put it simply, we would get rid of all carbon-based heating sources on the Outer Cape. And no oil, no propane, no natural gas. It would be all electric to get us to net zero. That's a giant project. Again, education, promotion, financing, it's the same thing. Working with vendors, Cape Light Compact, Cape Cod Commission. Big project. And then energy supply. This is something we've worked on already. We will get that solar array going on the transfer station. It will happen some year. We hope sooner rather than later. And we think that all of this can actually be done. It sounds crazy, it's daunting, it's overwhelming in the time of this virus. But one of the things that I wanted to back up a little, that we thought about for components, this whole thing could have 3 components. Simple to implement. We can break this down, make these things simple. Secondly, it would save people money. Municipalities would save money. They wouldn't spend more, they would save money over time and right away. And then thirdly, reduce greenhouse gases. So that's kind of our 3-part stool to support all this, at least conceptually. And then lastly, we just have a list of resources that we could use to reach out to these groups, to help hold forums, to get access to expertise, et cetera. And then again, we want to continue. We're going to put this on our agenda for our next Energy Committee meeting, and we will discuss it some more. I'd love to hear your thoughts. This is kind of like the experts have been saying about COVID-19. The virus doesn't care about our deadlines. It sets the deadlines. Well, and climate is setting the deadlines too. Climate change is charging ahead, whether there's a virus or not. And it's going to determine what we do, and how we get through it has to do with how we respond. So that's where we are, and we'd love to hear any thoughts from the board for starters, but from anybody, of course.
So Lily, I see your hand up, but I'm going to call on anyone from the board first, if anyone would like to speak. Do we have anybody who would like to speak on this?
Yeah,
Justina?
question.
Justina had her hand up first, and then Helen. Justina?
Well, thank you, David, and thanks to your committee. I think this is very inspiring, and clearly our national government is not helping things. So it was inspiring to hear you talk about how it has to happen at the state and local level, and then say that we are the local level. And the second thing that was inspiring for me, that was that it's a roadmap, and it as the details start to emerge, it starts to actually introduce a level of being possible for a problem that usually seems hopeless. So thank you very much. I really appreciated this as a board member and as a citizen.
Michael, may I speak, please, before you?
I'm just gonna call on the board first, but I will get to you, I promise.
Point of order and an open meeting law violation that I want to clarify.
An open meeting law violation?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay, just make it brief. I'd just like to get the board first and then go to the audience.
That would
Go ahead.
about this document. We've never even looked at this document. We received this document as a draft that David Mead Fox took on his own volition to write up, and we received it the day that Dick sent it on to the Board of Selectmen. We've never even looked at this as a board. We've never discussed it in an energy committee meeting, and it's a clear open meeting law violation that they're presenting it as a document from the energy committee. It is not. It is Fox's draft. I can read
David.
out to us.
Lily, finish up and then I'll call on David. Okay, I don't want to get caught up in the weeds here because this is a select board meeting, but I will let David Mead Fox respond to that. But first I would like to get to Helen because she's had her hand up and it's only fair. I said I would go to the select board first and then we can have a short, brief conversation about this, but it's not really the select board's purview to deal with the back and forth of the energy committee and their open meeting situation. So Helen, go ahead.
Yes, one, a question that only wants a brief answer, please. Why is it that the grid on the landfill is not functioning yet? That is my first question. What can we do about that, if anything? The second thing, I can address the kind of procedural thing that Lily brought up. And these things happen on committees, and it's just good for committees to remind each other internally about authorization, and also any single member on a committee can present what David has presented. He got on the agenda, but he has to qualify it as coming just from him. In other words, it's kind of just good manners, and it does get lost in the shuffle sometimes. It's not an egregious, malicious thing, in my opinion. So could we have my question answered? In other words, why is it that we're not getting energy from what's on the landfill yet?
Okay,
Please.
Dave, can you respond to both those things, please?
Yeah, sure, I'd be happy to. So the landfill issue has to do with the land court. So apparently some years ago, when the legal changes were made to allow the landfill to be capped and become a capped landfill instead of a dump, there was some, and this, I don't know the details, but there was some legal step that the town neglected to take. Nobody knew that, nobody noticed it. When the vendor who built the array went to check all the details, they discovered this. Amoresco, the company, discovered this. So the paperwork to fix it was sent into the state land court. Dick, I don't remember when, quite a long time ago. The land court is legendary for taking a year or two to rule on anything. If anybody has ideas about how to nudge or push the land court, I believe once they sign off on the document, they'll throw the switch and we're ready to go.
Okay, well, that might be something we can bring to the attention of our town council and see if there's any way to move forward. Okay, and I will speak to the open meeting violation that this document says David Mead Fox on it and not the Energy Committee that I can see anywhere. So that's the only thing I'll say on there, is that it may have been presented as the Energy Committee, and maybe that should not have been that. But as far as an open meeting violation, that's not up to us to determine. So, but I will point out that the documents are all signed at the bottom, David Mead Fox, and not the Energy Committee.
Point of order, didn't David wasn't, sorry, Mr. Etkin, wasn't he the one that requested?
Ryan, you just have to be recognized.
Oh, sorry.
It takes a little bit. You're recognized.
All right. So just a question. So these items were originally requested by Richard Elkin. Is that correct?
Yes.
And who did you request them on the behalf of?
I requested time to update what the Energy Committee is thinking about and doing.
You did request these under the purview of the Energy Committee.
Yes, it was an Energy Committee update, yes.
I don't know. In my opinion, then Lillian Green has a point, that it is being presented as Energy Committee work.
Point of order, though, Ryan.
Okay.
That may be true. It's just not really up to us to determine that. I don't think we have to. If somebody wants to file an open meeting law complaint, they can do so. I have Justina up there. I see Dick with your hand up. Is this pertaining to the same thing?
Yes.
I don't really want to get into the weeds on open meeting law situation.
Yeah, I think it would be good to move on. I think also, though, it would be good for the Energy Committee to have internal agreement and not, the select board has a long agenda tonight. And perhaps this could not happen again.
Yeah, I'd like to not go over the open meeting law situation as the select board here, and that you resolve this internally with the Energy Committee. So I'd just like to move on from that. I do have does anyone else on the board have anything to say about this? No. I think it's a good roadmap and a good set of goals. And I'd like to see the Energy Committee come forward with what they've discussed, but I appreciate the bottom-up approach that David mentioned. I think it's important to get community buy-in on any of these things. So I'll just leave it at that, and I'm ready to move on this. There's no vote, no motion. This is just to discuss. But in the future, when things come from the Energy Committee, they should probably have gone through the Energy Committee and maybe be a little bit more clear going forward. So that's my only suggestion on that. Everyone ready to move on?
Yes.
Board ready to move on? Okay, thank you so much for the update. It was very insightful. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, next on the agenda, we've got TA Hort's last day. So what are we discussing here? Is Dan on the line, or I imagine it's kind of up to Dan what he's willing to do. He gave us a resignation, and is Dan here?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay, so do you want to speak first, Dan?
Well, what I was offering to the board was that I originally had given my notice to say I was retiring as of June the 30th. Knowing that Maria is not going to be able to start right away, I'm offering to extend that to July 31st. Maria, I'm not sure exactly on her starting date. It sounded from an earlier discussion that it could be September 1st. I would still like to be retired as of July 31st. I've applied for my retirement and Medicare and everything as of August the 1st. Obviously, if you had, say, Mike Travato and Courtney each stepping up as they have already done, I'd be willing to help them at any time they had a question or anything during the month of August. And and you can figure out how to compensate them for the extra duties during the month of August if Maria isn't going to start. But if it's the board's will, I'm willing to extend my retirement date to July 31st.
Anyone from the board?
Yep,
Who do we got? Helen?
yep.
Okay, Helen, you're recognized.
Yeah. So Dan, and I responded to Dan already in an email a while back. Yes, please stay. Everything is kaflooey. And you have done a lot to help make things better, but I really wish you were going to be here until Maria took over. That said, July 31st, that's an extra month from you. I appreciate it. And I would want you to stay that long for every good reason. I hope that we will be able to get some help from you in August and after Maria comes on. And should that be documented? And is there any kind of pay involved with that? How does that work? I've been around for a couple of these transitions, and it has to be discussed very clearly and put in at least a memorandum of understanding.
Mr. Chair, if I can respond to her question.
Yes, please.
I'm not looking to be compensated at any time during the August time period. And of course, I will help Courtney and Mike and anybody else who needs help. And I will also be there as a resource for Maria when she gets on. If she has any questions on where to find something or how do we do something, I will be there at all. And that's just something you do as a professional. I don't expect compensation for that.
Thank you. But it was good to clarify it.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Okay, Janet. You're muted, Janet.
Thank you. Thank you. Why isn't it working? Okay. So thank you, Dan, for your years of service, and it's great that you'll continue to help out. I looked at the calendar, and I think Maria's first day could be September 3rd. That's a Monday. So we could probably use that date to start with. But yeah, I think thank you for staying a month longer. And we can always use your advice and guidance and help. And so I'm all for you staying till July 31st and then being around. And I'm hoping you'll help out with recommendations for, is that me? Okay, that's it.
Okay, Justina?
Yeah, I think July 31st is very generous of you, especially given that the last few months under COVID haven't been easy. And I think that we have a very capable town hall staff. I've been impressed by how Mike and how Courtney have handled themselves, and also the town departments in general. So I think you deserve to be let out of jail, frankly. And I'd be careful about making too many promises after July 31st, because you might get held to them. But in all seriousness, I think July 31st will be very civilized, and I bet Maria is looking forward to start, and I'm sure she wants to hit the ground running. So I think we're in good shape, personally, thanks to you and our capable town staff.
So my biggest concern is a good transition between the new town administrator and Dan leaving, and I really appreciate Dan's offering to help transition. I think it's of the utmost importance, and I'm sure he received that from his predecessor. So yeah, I'd be happy to have Dan here until July 31st, and I'm hoping that he follows through on the transition, which I'm sure he'll do. But I just feel it's worth mentioning because it's someone coming outside of Massachusetts, not used to having a select board, used to having a town council, which serves as a different purpose. And I'm sure she'll want to know some details about how things go and what she should expect. So thank you, Dan, and I'm in favor of this. Anyone else? Dan, would you like to speak again? Did I hear you? Okay.
There, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We'll make it July 31st. That sounds great. I just started today to kind of write a little bit of a guideline for Maria. So we'll make sure that it's seamless. And yes, I've had experience with this, and that, as you know, when I was going to start, I had to have a quick little surgery first. And when I started, Harry was always there as a reference for me, and I intend to do the same thing for Maria. So thank you.
That's of the utmost importance. Okay, we don't have to make a motion. Dan's just not retiring until the 31st. Is that correct? Or do we need to ratify it because he'd be on I don't know. Does anybody
Yes. I would say yes.
have a motion?
Yes.
Okay, let's make a motion then, Helen. You want to
Oh,
do it?
no, somebody else can do it.
Me, you want me to do it?
Yeah.
Okay, I move to extend Dan Hort. Is that you, Dan?
Yep.
Are you talking? Or is it feedback? Oh, it's me. Okay, sorry about that. I move to extend Dan Hort's contract, I guess, till the 31st of July.
Helen second. Helen, I.
Michael, I.
Justina, I, and I think Janet's muted.
Ryan, aye.
Janet, do we have anything here? She already said she supports it, but I don't see her picture.
Well, she did a thumbs up. I think that.
Thumbs up? Okay,
Yeah,
Janet,
I'm unmuted.
aye. Right? So 5-0?
Right, unanimous.
Unanimous vote. Okay, moving on. Discussion of COVID-19 effect on town budget. So I'm going to let Dan speak on this first because he probably knows the most about it. So floor is yours, Dan.
So this is a tough discussion for everybody coming up, and I know that the Finance Committee has already had some discussions on this, and I'll be at their meeting tomorrow night to continue this discussion. But we're looking at the effect of COVID on the town's budget, and when we're looking at that, it's going to have a severe effect, and it's going to be in terms of room tax revenue, meals tax revenue, use of town-owned property. We're also going to see it hit probably, no doubt about it, the beach fund, the recreation fund, could be the ambulance fund. We don't really know yet how large of an impact it's going to have in these areas. But there are certain things that we're going to need to look at, that how are we going to pay for these? And, you know, when we normally look at something and say, how are we going to pay for these? Well, if we don't have the money available in our budget, we may need to do it as an override. You know, that's a hard thing to do when this financial impact is hitting everybody in town. It's hitting the town, and it's hitting all the residents and the non-resident taxpayers in town. So it's hitting everybody. options that I have thought about, not real fond of any of them, but tough times call for tough measures. We may want to look at using free cash to pay for some of the things that are going to be above and beyond this year, such as the portable restrooms that are probably going to be as much as 5 to 10 times as much as they were the year before. We could also look at using part of the stabilization fund. It's not something I would normally look to do, but this is going to be a really tough time and we've got some hard decisions to make. We may want to decide that we're not going to put a deposit into the OPEB trust fund for this year only. None of these are things that, even as I'm saying them, I'm cringing a little bit, because none of these are easy things or great solutions, but there aren't any great solutions out there right now. We could be looking at a deficit over the next couple of years of $1 million or so. You know, if the room occupancy tax takes the hit that we think it's going to have, we were assuming in our budget when we first prepared it that it was going to bring in $250,000 in FY21, and that was based on the expansion of the room occupancy tax. It's probably not going to hit that. So, you know, we need to start thinking about what areas we can cut in our budget. And you know, again, I cringe every time I say any of these things, because there isn't a lot of fat in your budget for the town of Wellfleet. And so when we're talking about cutting something, that usually will mean we've got to either reduce or eliminate some sort of services that we have in town right now. So that might mean that a building or a service that's open 7 days a week maybe can only be open 5 days a week. You know, as much as I hate to say this, it may require us to furlough some employees. I followed the discussion that Provincetown had on Monday night, and, you know, they're talking about the exact same things that we're talking about. How do we close this deficit that we have for the upcoming year? And there are no easy answers, but I think what we need to do is we need to kind of say, okay, how do we want to go about doing this? How much, we don't know what the hits are going to be yet. We'll probably know maybe after the end of the summer, we'll have a better idea. As you know, I won't be here at the end of the summer, but I can still be involved to, you know, as in a sense, a financial advisor, and say, okay, now that we know this, these are the things, and I can talk with the new town administrator and the select board and say, okay, these are the things you may want to consider cutting. So do we want to start looking at trying to cut stuff now when we don't really know how much we need to cut? If we don't want to do it now, when? And how much do we try to cut? There are no easy answers here. So I'm turning it over to you. I'm also going to be talking, as I said, to the Finance Committee tomorrow night. There are no easy answers here, and I completely understand that. I don't expect, the state is going to be in a tough situation too, so it's not like I expect that the state's going to come through with money to bail out the towns and cities in Massachusetts. I think so much of this is going to have to fall on us. So I would leave it there, and be interested to hear what your comments and your thoughts are.
So I'm just going to recognize myself first on this. I just am looking here at some of the numbers, and it looks like we have 1.2 million in the stabilization fund for use in an emergency, and $830,000 in free cash. And if this is an emergency, I'm not sure what is. And I'm not advocating spending all of our stabilization fund by any means, but I think making decisions about budget cuts this early in the season seems premature. I mean, I'm not convinced that we're not going to have a high short-term rental revenues. Beach sticker revenues are definitely going to take a hit, you know, because at least as of now, we're not doing any day parking. But, you know, visitor parking stickers may be sold at a higher number. So we don't really know. There's so many unknowns that I'm a little hesitant to start talking about budget cuts personally that affect town employees and staff until we have a sort of better understanding of how the summer's going. Like, we're still in June. By the end of July, we should know how busy we are. I'm under the impression that we're going to be quite busy given all the recent articles and trends in short-term rentals on Cape Cod. And so I'll leave it at that, and I'll let the rest of the board speak. But I think that a sort of multi-tiered approach where we use a little bit of each and then maybe try and trim some fat. And then obviously if we come way short, we're going to have to do something, and we'll have to address it when we have a clearer understanding, I think. That's how I feel about it. And then I'll let the rest of the board speak. I don't know who had their hand up first, so I guess I'll go by seniority here. And let's go with Helen then, right?
Yeah, Mike, I agree with you that it's going to be a lot of small hits. There isn't much fat, as Dan said, so trimming the fat isn't really something we do. The thing I think we shouldn't touch, although it's obscure to some people, and other towns just let it rip, is the, let's see, do I have the initials right? OPEB fund, Dan? Is that, yeah, that's what you call it. I think we shouldn't touch that because this may be an emergency now, it certainly is, but we don't know what's coming down the pike. And things are changing very rapidly. And that is the guarantee to our employees that if they work for us, we will be there for them in the future. That said, I have a question for Dan. I'm not proposing this, but it would be something to propose to our various collective bargaining units. Instead of furloughing members of the unions, could it be put to them who need to make their salaries as much as the next person, if they would be willing to consider some kind of temporary contract? So the question to Dan is this impossible? In other words, given that everything's kaflooey, as I said earlier in the meeting, would it be possible to bring that up? Not that we think they should do it, but would it be something for them to consider? A way to contribute to a really bad situation to make it better? Dan?
Mr. Chair, through you to Select Board Member Wilson. I think that's something that I could definitely discuss with our Teamsters, with our WEA, the police and fire, just kind of see if they have any thoughts or any options to it. I lost part of what you said. Your voice wasn't coming through clearly, but if it was in reference to, you know, would you be willing to work, say, for the next 6 months, work a 4-day work week and work for 80% of your pay instead of working a full pay period? You know, we can certainly explore that and just see what they think about the idea. Some people may love the idea of maybe working a 4-day work week instead. Some people may not be able to afford it, and that's completely understandable. But we can approach them and just see what their thoughts are on it.
And Dan, the point is that in my mind,
Helen?
what is this noise?
It's Dan's phone.
Okay, sorry. my point is that that would be preferable, perhaps, to the unions, which are supposed to stick together, than having employees furloughed, you see. The second thing is, the third thing I want to say is lots of small trimming on lots of different departments, triaging, asking departments to triage activities and expenditures, and to come to us and the finance committee and say, this is what we think we should do now. Because it's going to carry over well into next year easily, and maybe, who knows? I mean, I agree with Mike that we have to just watch this as closely as we can. But I don't think it's going to improve in terms of income, revenue, anytime soon. Thank you.
Next, we have Janet.
Okay. So a good place to start is tomorrow night with the Finance Committee, because I'm sure they've been thinking about it. And maybe we could have a meeting or one of our agenda items in really probably in the 1st of July, which would be, I think, the 8th, maybe it'd be the 5th of July, to talk about this again after Mr. Hoare and the Finance Committee and employees and directors have all gotten a chance to meet, because I do think this is a long discussion. But I agree with Helen, you know, employees come first, and you know, maybe some would like a 4-day work week, and or even working from home or something, closing some buildings. All of those are good suggestions, as long as at this point nothing is drastic, because I don't think we're at that point. But yeah, let's hear what the Finance Committee says and the department's heads say, and meet in 2 weeks on it. 3 weeks. I think we go 3 weeks. Thank you.
I see Ryan's hand up. Ryan Curley, you recognize?
Wait, were we going in the order of?
Oh, you're hitting her hand up, Justina. If you
Yeah.
want, go ahead. Sorry, Ryan, I don't recognize Justina because she didn't know. Okay.
Yeah,
Just put your hand
I took
up.
my hand down after you said we were going in order of seniority.
Okay. That's
Dan, I think it's really responsible that you, you know, brought these numbers to the board's attention, but I did do a little penciling, and it looked like the total affected areas of revenue that you had were 726,000 if they all went away to zero, and that's 3% of our revenues. So I took a look, and it looked like room occupancy ballparked at 250 and meals ballparked at 245 was 500,000 of that number. And for the room occupancy tax, it's clearly not going to be zero. I do keep in touch with a couple of realtors, as well as get notifications from an online booking site. And if anything that's going to come into our room occupancy tax, I think it's going to be that we've got a lot of 30-day rentals, which are exempt, but it's certainly not going to be nothing with that 250 room. I can't speak to the meals tax. So of that 500,000, we'll still get some of that revenue. So I think we're going to be looking at a shortfall, but not a drastic shortfall. I don't see that the department budgets, operating budgets, have 3% in cuts, most of them. But certainly we can handle a 3% revenue shortfall. I think that my idea is, building on Dan's excellent suggestions, would be first to ask if anybody on staff is interested in a 4-day work week for 6 months or a year and would be willing to take a salary adjustment. And also going to each, I think somebody else said it, going to each department head and saying, what if anything, what if any percent cut can you have? And then that would perhaps let us cut 10%, get the 10% revenue from our free cash, for example. So somebody else said a lot of little numbers, but I do think that on the overall percentage of revenue, we're not down very much. Our property taxes on the numbers we got remained untouched, and they're 92% of the budget. So we're only really worrying about other revenue than real estate tax that's going to be affected by COVID, and we'll be looking at that when it comes in. But hopefully we won't be hurt too hard. I don't know what the beach porta potty increase in expense is going to do to us, but you know, with a little bit of ingenuity, I think we can get through this.
Okay, Ryan Curley, you're recognized.
All right, well, first a question for Dan. So Mr. Chair, through you to Dan, I already kind of know the answer to this, but just for the board's sake, what is the approximate ballpark cost for the additional porta potties throughout the end of the season?
I expect the cost of the porta potties to be somewhere in the area of $250,000. Last year, the contract was about $42,000.
Okay, and will the amount that's being expended in this current financial year on the porta potties carry over into the next?
No, I think we have enough money, for example, in, say, the snow and ice budget and some areas where monies haven't been spent, that in our year-end transfers, we'll be able to cover that additional cost.
Okay. One thing in regards to the porta potties, I just want to make sure we have the right number out there. If we have too much, and if that results in a higher RFP cost, I don't want to be having the town pay for something if it's not being fully utilized, and then turn around and ask some staff members possibly be furloughed because we spent a lot of money on porta potties for the summer. I think there's plenty of money in I don't think there's going to be a huge hit on terms of the tax, or meals tax, and well, meals tax for a couple months. And then we have to see that the rooms tax should be kind of similar, but it'll be down some. But the other areas are like the shellfish department has a request for an additional staff member. I think that's something like $57,000 over the course of financial year 21. I think that's an easy area to cut. But again, this is to prioritize the staff that we currently already have, rather than sacrificing somebody's pay to hire additional staff. Then the other areas is the rec department. They have a number of budget items for events that may or may not happen. I'd like to know what they're planning. And then there is the travel, meals, and lodging. Altogether, that's, again, I think it's somewhere around $50,000. Some of that, obviously may not happen, but some of it is baked into people or employees conducting their jobs using their personal vehicles and being remitted for their use. The other area, if we're going to ask, if we're even considering asking employees to potentially take a pay cut, I think it's only fair to ask the select board to do the same. I'd be very uncomfortable to ask employees to take a pay cut without, I know our salaries are fairly small, but I just do not feel comfortable cutting somebody's salary without cutting ours. We're basically volunteers. We're not being paid as full-time employees, and I'd rather prioritize the full-time employees. So I would propose for the financial year 2021 to cut the selectman's salary to $1,250 per person, if that's okay with the board.
Well,
Mike?
I'll speak now. I would say that the select board, is highly underpaid for the amount of work that we do. I think it's about $42 a week for about sometimes a 40-hour-a-week job. So I don't think really the select board is the place to cut. It's not like it makes a huge difference to me, that $42 a week, but I was always taught to value your work. And I think that there's some buy-in to having to do, like when you're getting compensated, even that small amount, that you have an obligation to the taxpayers to do a good job and to put that time in and really focus on that. And given that, it's only $42, I generally think that we're kind of underpaid generally. So I wouldn't support that. I don't think we need to really even start talking about cutting staff pay at this point. Yeah, so that, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but
I'd like Ryan to work a little bit longer on the board before he asks.
cuts our
and
salary.
see what it's like before he decides that cutting our honorarium is the right place to start.
Mike?
Yes, Helen.
Thank you. I had my hand up.
Let's just kind of
this
do
is
this,
not-
run through the board. Like we'll go through the board one more time and then kind of see where we stand if we want to move on.
Yeah, I think hearing back from the departments and so forth, fine, let's do that at a later date. But here's the point. The discussion of whether or not we should forego our payment for being special municipal employees is not on the agenda. So let's not talk about it now. I've already donated whatever I've gotten back to the town in various ways. But here's the other thing. We need to keep meeting on this as the numbers come in. So let me just add that as my last thought on the subject. In other words, I think it should be a recurrent part of our COVID-19 sections on our agenda as we go forward this summer. Things are changing very quickly. Thank you.
Okay, I would agree. I think we need to hear from the finance committee. So, well, that's coming up. And I think, I think this is an unprecedented emergency. And also there was one other thing that I wanted to ask Dan about while he's on the line here, if he's still on the line, is the CARES Act funding for infrastructure for COVID-19. I know that has to go through a FEMA procurement that could take a while, but is that something that would qualify to be reimbursed through the CARES Act for COVID-19 expenditures? I would think it would be.
So in response to your question, it's Police Chief Hurley and Fire Chief Pauly have taken the lead on doing the responses and collecting the data for the CARES Act reimbursement. They sent something for me to be signed. I think it was maybe on a Thursday, and the money was in our account the following week. So it was surprisingly very prompt, very efficient. Portable restrooms, the cleaning and maintenance of portable restrooms is something that could be covered under the CARES Act. So the additional hits that we're looking at taking there, we may be able to receive reimbursement from them. We have up to, I think it's $240,000 that's been allocated to Wellfleet. So there is some assistance there with some of these expenses that we're seeing showing up.
So my understanding of that was that it was the percentage that we got was from the state that came quickly, and then the other expenditures that's on infrastructure and stuff like that was going to be coming from FEMA, and that we would have to get money through a FEMA application process, which may take a long time. But I guess that reimbursement, I'm just saying, if we know we're going to get it, even if it takes a long time, then maybe using some of the stabilization fund or free cash in the meantime to make up the budget shortfall might be in order. if it's in relation to the portable toilets. And that's all I have to say about the subject. I'm ready to move on, hear from the Finance Committee next time. If anyone else has something to speak about the budget. Helen, you just spoke, so I'm gonna.
Yeah,
Mike,
no,
if
I
I
don't
could
want,
just-
I have nothing more, sorry.
Justina has one more thing, I think.
Yeah, I do. I think that we should hear from the finance. Again, I'm going to say that we're looking at like 3 to 1.5% shortfall. That could come down to a couple of $100,000. I don't think the room occupancy tax is going to take the kind of hit that may be being forecast based on the realtors I'm talking to, who are saying that demand for rentals is extremely strong, and that and people who had booked rentals and were holding out to wait to hear from the state are booking. They are, certainly there's some cancellations, but it doesn't look like a total disaster. So I think that given we have, if I'm correct, $2 million in available cash, not that we want to use it all, and we're looking at a shortfall that's going to be in the hundreds of thousands, I think we should monitor it, but I would certainly say furloughing any staff is a last resort, and that I think we're going to be able to make it through.
Okay, I do have one department head here who would like to speak, and I'll recognize Nancy Civetta on this topic, and then I would like to move on after that. So Nancy?
Hi, thank you very much. I just wanted to correct for the public record. We did not request a full-time employee after we originally did with the original budget, and then we withdrew that, and we requested an $8,000 part-time recreational patrol person, and we will not get that this year because obviously we're working on a 1/12 budget of last year, and we will make do. But I didn't want there to be any confusion about us requesting an additional employee at this time, and we'll make do. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying, Nancy. Okay, on to the next item. We have approval of the July 2020 budget by the Select Board. So, let's see, I exited out of my. Okay, so Dan, is this something you want to talk about before?
So, Mr. Chair, if I can just give you a brief introduction here. What
Yes.
we did is I asked each one of the departments to go through and give me an estimate of what their spending would be for the month of July, because and subsequent months as well. So we'll bring that to you in July for August, September, and October. But because town meeting is in October, we will not have a FY21 budget approved. So the state has a mechanism where if the select board approves what they call a 1/12 budget, if they approve a budget for the month of July, then the town can use that for expenditures during the month of July. So rather than following an approved budget for the entire year, we're just looking at approving a budget for one month. In the month of July, for the most part, you'll see a little bit heavier of an increase in seasonal workers because most of our seasonal staff is here in July and August. In unclassified, you'll see a significantly larger amount of monies spent in the month of July, and that is because the retirement assessment, our property and insurance, our property and liability insurance is paid in the month of July, and our workers' comp insurance premiums are paid in the. So we pay everything up front to get a better deal on what our payments are. So you'll see that being a little bit larger. But so what we've done here is we've asked you to approve a budget in the amount of $3,518,822. And that is going through every individual line item in the budget and say, okay, how much do we expect to expend in the month of July? And the state then allows you to be able to go forward during July with this budget being approved. You'll also see a secondary area where I've also asked you to approve amounts for the water and the marina enterprise funds under the same concept of splitting the cost up by month unless we know there's a specific expense that comes up during that month. So that's my introduction.
Okay, so it doesn't, the 112 budget, it doesn't matter. They expect it to average out in the end. So if it's high now and low later, as long as we're within our spending for the last fiscal year.
That's basically it.
Okay. Okay, does anyone want to speak to this on the board?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Nice, yep.
Yeah. Dan, thank you for preparing this for this meeting. We can't spend less. We can spend more in July, though. And I'm not quite sure. I didn't reread this today. I read it yesterday, or I forget. Whenever you sent it, I read it. My question is, are we allowed to spend, we're allowed to spend more than 1/12 if we need to. Is that correct? A
Yes,
stupid
that is
question.
correct.
Thank you.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Someone ready to make a motion?
I will. I move to approve the July 2020 budget as presented by the town administrator in the amount of $3,518,822.
Okay, is there a
Helen,
second?
second.
Okay. All in favor?
Helen, aye.
Michael, aye.
Justina, aye.
Ryan, aye.
Janet, are you anywhere?
I am. I raised my hand. So I guess, so you guys, this is my new role as not being chair. So you guys just stay unmuted the whole time.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I'll just unmute.
The
Usually
motion
causes
carries
interference.
5-0.
Yes.
Okay, and moving on to the next item, we have approval of contract for the new TA, Maria Broadbent.
Before you move, Mr. Chair, before you move on, if you could also make the motion and approve the enterprise fund budgets which are on that same sheet.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Wait, okay, there's no motion there for me.
I can do it.
Go ahead, Helen.
I move that we approve the enterprise fund budgets for the marina and the municipal water system as printed in our packet.
Second.
All in
Helen,
favor?
Hmm?
I voted. Helen, aye.
Justina,
Okay.
aye.
Janet, aye.
Ryan, aye.
Michael, aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, so now approval of contract for new TA Maria Broadbent. So we just, I guess, approved the contract being made.
Yeah.
So is this been adjusted, Dan? Is this ready to be approved in the public meeting now?
What I would ask that you do is just say that you're going to move to approve the 3-year contract with Maria Broadbent to serve as the new Wellfleet Town Administrator as amended.
Okay.
You amended it during executive session.
Okay, so do we need to have any discussion on this from the board? I don't need to.
No. I will second that since Dan made it.
Dan can't make a motion.
No, Dan can't make the
I
motion.
know, but whatever he said, I say that.
Okay, Helen,
So Helen second. Janet moved it. Helen second.
okay,
Helen, aye.
Janet, aye.
Justina, aye.
Ryan, aye.
and Michael, aye. Okay, motion carries 5-0. So now we're on to select board reports. Anybody got a report?
I do.
Justina had her hand up here. So go Justina first.
Yeah. Just quickly, I attended a virtual meeting of the Cape Cod Water Protection Collaborative, which meets quarterly and talks about various towns on the Cape and what they're doing for water quality. And in the process of preparing for that meeting, we're in good shape versus other towns, I think. And I learned the interesting and heartening fact in preparing for the meeting that Scott Horsley's latest calculations show that if we move to the carbon septic, which is the septic with the wood chips that we're also happy about, and do nothing else than replace failing septics with carbon, the carbon septics, and require new septics to be carbon septics, that we can get rid of, I believe it's 70% of our nitrogen problem in 20 years. So that was fun to hear. And then the other thing I have to report is that I also sit on the Cape Cod Water Protection Fund Committee, and we will be receiving the information of the room occupancy June receipts shortly, which I will report to this board.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Looks like Helen has her hand up.
Yeah, nothing special. I went to the Mass Municipal Association, which had a lot about COVID. I'm not going to report what was there because I think some of the rest of us were there. And I went to the community needs meeting. I did not participate, but just listening is very useful. And I want to report that hearing from these different parts of the community, whether it's departments or, like the school or what's going on with Outer Cape Health and the community needs Zoom meetings, has been a silver lining for this terrible situation. I feel that there's much more connectivity, and I wish that there was some way to continue it, but that's going to be something I'm going to bring up later under topics for future concerns. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have a report? So I was just going to say that the needs meeting is still meeting. I'm not sure if the meetings are going to be public meetings. I think they're more just the different factions in town sort of doing community service, and the Navigator program all communicating with each other so they know what's going on around in each various group, so that they can sort of bounce ideas off each other and get feedback from each other. And I know that it's also resulted in a new nonprofit that's got something to do with housing resources to fund housing. So good stuff is coming out of all that sort of community group communication. So I think it will keep going. I think right now it's sort of on the same sort of slowing down as everything gets busy and people are focusing on what's going on in front of us as summer moves forward. But I see that is going to continue, and maybe we can get some reports from Navigator to the select board just to get it more public, things like that. That's all I had. Anyone else? No? Okay, not seeing anyone. Okay, so then town administrator report. You got anything, Dan? Dan's still on here? Yeah, he's still on. Okay, I'll give him a second and then.
Mike, I have a question while he's getting on.
Sure.
Him?
Yep.
Dan, I hope Dan can at least hear me.
I can hear you and I can speak.
Thank you, thank you. I'm assuming that the porta potty option was weighed carefully in terms of, does it cost more to have extra cleaning in the bathrooms? Is it safer? And my question about it is, can you tell us whose liability is it if those porta potties aren't cleaned properly? Is it the towns or is it the companies? How does that work?
The company is required to carry liability insurance. So they are responsible for the cleaning.
And it's being done in an extra special way, I would assume?
Yes,
I know
according to
extra
standards,
Okay.
according to standards by the state.
Under COVID.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so, and do you have anything else, Dan, or is that it?
Nothing for me.
Okay, nothing from Dan. Moving on to topics for future discussion. Okay, now I gotta get my pen out.
Okay.
Helen?
Yeah.
You're right.
So I have been dutifully for over a year, I think, signing the warrants. What some of you remember is we are able to designate somebody on the board to do that. All that means is when there's a warrant to sign, which has to do with getting payroll out, you go in preferably on Thursday or Friday morning, and only one person has to go in and sign as opposed to 3. And I would like to not be doing that this coming year. And it's been fine, it's easy, but can we have that on the next agenda so that we can vote and designate somebody else to do it?
Okay.
Please.
Designate.
And that's my only, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Ryan, you're recognized.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, if you could please request that the Nauset Regional School Building Committee attend one of our regularly scheduled select board meetings and present the current plans for the Nauset Regional School and the energy usage plans of that construction. And the second item I would like to talk about in the future is plans to see if there's anything that the town can do to increase the response rate of the census. We all know it's pretty low. Originally, the Council of Aging and the library were going to be key aspects of getting the complete count of the census, and obviously the situation with COVID has kind of thrown a monkey into the wrench, and we're already geographically difficult for the census. And those are the 2 items I would like to discuss.
Okay, that's fine. And anyone else? Janet, you got anything?
No.
No?
Nope.
Just
The COVID, obviously COVID updates.
Yeah.
Finance committees updates like we talked about.
Okay. I would like to have, we're not doing any public safety meetings, but it would be nice to hear from the health agent about how things are going with indoor seating with restaurants and what their protocols are and stuff like that. Just so in the public and everyone has an understanding of what's expected of them, and that also people watching the meeting have an expectation of what they'll be going into if they're doing indoor dining. So sort of a reassurance that state guidelines are being followed, and also what the Board of Health or the health agents requiring, maybe in conjunction with that. I'm not really sure. So I'd like to have them at our next meeting. Have Hillary give us an update on the Board of Health and indoor seating at restaurants. And Justine, you got anything?
No, it sounds like we've got a full agenda.
Okay. All right. So I guess that's it. Now we have correspondence and vacancy reports. Anybody got any?
Lots of correspondence, but it's all kind of the same, so.
Yeah.
Not good. I'll move on to the minutes.
Okay, minutes. So Ellen, you ready to tell me some stuff? Minutes?
Yeah, I've been working towards this for a while. Just to let you know, I'm the one who has been for years now giving line reads to our minutes. And I just hit a wall about a month ago. So just to alert you, not to pull the rug out from under and just stop doing it, but we have a number of options. We can release minutes as drafts without somebody going over them carefully. Courtney does good minutes, but somebody should read through them and make sure and check, the video or, now the audios if there's something that sounds off. But Courtney does a very good job, and go for typos and stuff. But with many thanks for your trust over the years, which I hope I earned, I'm not going to be doing this anymore. So without any disapproval, I'm simply going to only be willing to vote to release minutes. I'm not going to approve them, not because I don't think they're okay, but because I am not going to give that kind of careful going over anymore. And I can't vote to approve something if I haven't read it carefully. So it's important for you to understand that I'm doing this in a good-natured way, and I've worked very hard to do this for a long time. So I'm backing out. I haven't, in fact, with 2 exceptions, which I'm not going to bother to amend because they frankly didn't need it, really. I'm not going to, I didn't look at any of the minutes on here. There have been so many more meetings. Mm-hmm. And we do have the audio. In other words, if we really wanted to pin something down and felt fuzzy about it, you can just go to the audio. So I'm not even going to make the motion to do what I'm suggesting we do. I'll let somebody else make the motion to approve them, or to approve them as drafts and release them, or do whatever you want. I'm just a happy picnic goer here.
I've grazed through the minutes. I'm happy with the minutes personally. I'm not one to pick through, but I do appreciate all the attention to detail that you give, Helen. So that will be missed. But I'm okay with approving the minutes as I don't know how the rest of the board feels.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I would move to approve the minutes. I've read them all, and they look good. So do you want me to move them all at once or take them individually?
I'm fine with moving them all at once.
Okay.
Do you want to, yeah, go ahead and make the motion.
Okay. I move to approve the minutes of May 26th, June 2nd, June 4th, June 8th, June 9th, June 16th, 2020 as amended.
Second.
Ellen, second. Helen, nay.
Janet, yes.
Justina, yes. A, yes.
Ryan, abstain.
Michael, aye. The motion carries 3 to 1 and 1 abstain.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Helen, because I do appreciate all the detail and attention you gave it.
Thank you, Helen.
You're welcome, dears. It'll be fine.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So
I
moved.
move.
Second.
Okay, we're all in favor. Yeah,
Helen, I.
Janet, aye.
Justina, aye.
Ryan, aye.
Michael, aye.
All right, thank you, Michael. You did a great job.
Thanks.
Thank
Hey,
you, Mike.
good job,
Welcome,
Ryan,
Ryan.
for your first meeting. My first meeting was 4 hours long.
Well, thank you.